from an industry perspective, you did as much homework as you could before you got here.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that you didn't anticipate, or the things that you discovered that were maybe not a big surprise, but what were some of the things that were the paradigm shift, so to speak, for you from an industry perspective? And is that then the more you learn about the industry, does it encourage you, inspire you? Do you feel more excited? I mean, knowing that you were going from a place where you're comfortable to a place that you felt comfortable enough being uncomfortable in, what were your thoughts? And I say that and try to think of it from the optics of someone that's listening who's thinking about making a career change and wants to get in this industry and doesn't really know where they could bring value, but they know that they're not happy in the industry that they're in.
Sure. I think, so when I first, my view of this industry was very like, oh, this is kind of a tech space kind of, and I viewed it as that I put it in that bucket, and I didn't really see how much it affected my day to day, right? And in the future, how it'll affect my day to day. And so, I've always tried to be purpose driven, right? We have the veteran piece of it, but ultimately just leaving the world in a better place and in sync and in harmony, and whether that's for my family, to the world, whatever. We won't go that far into my brain today. But I was like, no, I'm actually part of something completely bigger. And the reality is that it's not just with Overwatch, there's so many places within this industry that are starving for the same exact things. And I'm just from a little over a year ago in interacting with you guys and where the industry was and where it is now. I think back then it was a little bit more closed off to those who did not come from the industry. And I wouldn't say it's done a complete 180, but it's really getting there. And I think people are understanding like, hey, if we don't open up and we don't open the doors for people to see what's inside, we're going to face some there's already enough challenges. We've got power and all of that. There's going to be some really big challenges for us to tackle.
That's interesting to open the door because I didn't realize that we ever were putting out this thing that it was closed. I do agree with you that we need to make it more inviting and more welcome for more people. I feel it's hard to do from the fringe, right? Which is why we're all trying so hard to create this massive collective that builds enough momentum to take this industry more mainstream.
Right.
And this podcast will have, this industry was founded by really 5 major large hyperscale enterprise end users and an oligopoly of operators that serve them when they can't serve themselves. And then it's like the airline industry in different regions of the United States. If I'm in Hawaii, I'm sure there's Hawaiian airlines that are bouncing around those islands, but they're regional, right? But in the most part, you're going to the airport, and in any airport, you're going to see the same airlines. And this industry has an oligopoly very similar to that. So it's not very big.
Right.
It's just very massive in impact.
Right.
And I think that what my goal has been, and guys like Peter Gross have been helping me do this, is he's one of the pioneers of this industry, and he runs in orbit with some of the biggest powerhouses in this industry. And he has agreed to help collect some of those people to get their voices on a platform that, not that people aren't reading static magazines. I mean, Interglobix magazine is a fantastic magazine. It's my go-to one when I want to read anything, and we're on their list. But that magazine, I think, is great because it does do a deep dive into things. It's not just tangential or just hitting the top of it really digs into the waterline, which is why I really love that magazine. But sometimes people can't read magazines when they're driving down the road or when they're on the treadmill or when they're out running, but they can listen to a podcast, right? And I think if we could get some of those people here, what we can do is talk about the beginning of this industry and use them to inspire all these other people to come into this industry and bring their talent and their passion. Right. And we're just facilitating that right here with these types of platforms. But, understanding that this industry was as good as you thought it would be, but maybe even a little bit better, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. I just didn't really understand it. And again, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. And it was just not something. I didn't have a lot of exposure to it, right?
You find it's complicated still? Is it I don't know if it's the door is closed, but intimidating for some.
It wasn't even intimidating. I was just trying to understand it for me because there's different aspects of it. And again, for you've been in it for 20 years yourself, right? Like that's just normal day to day. If I take you
It's a
out of
language.
this and I take you into some, my previous world, you're going to be like,
Yeah.
okay,
Until I
what?
acclimate.
Yeah, till you acclimate. And that's what this is acclimating. So I think anyone can go into any industry, right? And they can acclimate and they can do really well. But I've never, in my previous experience, I had exposure to a lot of different industries, good one, ones that were emerging, ones that were dying off, that were trying to stay relevant. And I have just in my work, it never came past the data center industry whatsoever. And so it's completely different and I enjoy it. And now I'm learning more about it. I've never seen so many opportunities in an industry.
What, for anybody that's listening, what advice do you have to them if they want to get into this industry and don't know where to start?
Honestly, you can go into podcasts. You can, honestly, LinkedIn is an amazing tool of just reaching out to people. I think when you're, you as a CEO, someone who's been in the industry for a long time, like you want to pass this on to the next generation. And so I'm sure there's a ton of people like you in this industry that are wanting to share this knowledge and what it took you 20 years, if you can get it to someone where they can learn it in 10, like that is the definition of success right now. Like there's an old school mentality of like, well, I had to do this to get to here. And so people are going to have to go through the same thing. The reality, yeah, it's like, no, it's not going to work like that. We're never going to grow at the rate that we need to. And, obviously want to, but to reach out to people, right? And network, like networking can be so uncomfortable, right? But it used to be one of my weak points of just like, I deal with enough people. I don't want to do it, but network, reach out to people. The worst thing that can happen is someone either A, doesn't respond to you, or B, they tell you they don't have time. Okay, move on, ask somebody else.
So, now that you're here and you kind of understand the industry a little bit better, what's it like now being a female in this industry that's very, I don't want to say male dominated, it's male heavy, right?
Yeah,
there's a lot of powerful women in this industry.
There's a ton of powerful women in this industry, but statistically, unless they've changed since I last looked at it a few months ago, 8% of the workforce in this industry are women, right?
So what do we do about that?
We start opening the doors and opportunities and start educating people, pulling people in, creating opportunities that are at entry level. We talked about Compass and they have some great programs like that, but they're one of many beasts that could be doing that. And so, whether it's informational and we're out there, we're talking to maybe groups that we don't normally talk to about this. And, we have to look internally at where we have to be intentional about creating programs for those, whether it's getting X, Y, and Z certification where, hey, you're going to go, it's somebody out of the military, or even if it's someone who's just like, I'm lost in life. I don't know what I'm going to do. Right. Maybe I have this degree, maybe I don't, but there's a ton of opportunities, whether that's going into construction, or that's going more maybe on a IT technical side within this industry, or there's a lot of different opportunities. And I think it's just talking about it more and educating people.
What would be some of the things that you think that we could do? Like we have platforms. I mean, you're on this platform. Believe it or not, it's really hard to get women that want to come on this platform. I've invited, I'd say for every 10 to 15 women I ask, I get probably 5 replies. And of those replies, I get like 2 that are like, they'll toy with the idea and then find an excuse of why not to. I don't know why, but like, what can we be doing? What can we as
women in the industry need to be championing it more is what it boils down to, right? And not that we still want our male counterparts doing the same, but the onus is on us to go out and do that, right? And there's a ton of great women within the industry and organizations within this industry or communities, right, who are doing that. And I think it's just a continuing effort and maybe combining some efforts in order to do that.
Hopefully you could help lead some of those, like that WIMCO event that you guys all went to in Houston.
Yeah.
There probably needs to be some more of those. Don't you agree? But
Absolutely.
I think that DCAC, hopefully you can take a hold of the brand for DCAC and help pioneer some sort of women, something. We have a podcast, we have a conference. There's no limit to what you can do in creating that platform to bring on those other disruptive ladies that have just such a massive impact on these leadership teams. Like, I don't think any of us understood. I don't think I even understood. I knew the impact that you made to the way that I was thinking, because in the stages that I was at in the early days is I had to be, my mindset I felt needed to be where it was at that time, which was, you have to be abrasive and cavalier and relentless as hell, right? But when you get to a point where volume and momentum aren't going to solve your problems and you have to slow down and fix real problems, you have to have real answers. And if you don't, you have to find those that can. And those around me were conditioned and trained like me, which was, this industry was designed, think about it, the industry has grown faster than every other industry because of every other industry's growth.
Right.
Every industry's dependency on technology as it continues to grow has an impact on the data center industry or the critical infrastructure industry, in addition to what we do as consumers from a cloud adoption rate or video games or e-commerce or video caching or streaming. We now have AI, right? And we have these huge needs of industry. And because the needs are so great, a lot of these companies, they're not going to slow down to fix their teams. They're going to treat their teams. Okay, we believe that the human resource is the most important resource in the business. If you're a business where the primary line of business you use to generate revenue is space, power, and cooling as an example, then they will treat the humans the same way they treat the machines, which is if there's a problem with that machine, they will either rip out and replace that machine, or they'll find a way to work without that machine, and they'll change the design. And I think that the stress and the pressure that's on this industry and the internal churn within the industry from a recruiting perspective, as well as the number of people that are lost from this industry to other industries, will make it to where those companies have to slow down and invest more into fixing the people at their company, just like they would the machines. If you have a UPS that's supposed to last for 20 years and at year 4 it breaks, you're not going to rip out that UPS if you could get it fixed and put it back in service, because it pencils better. It hits to your bottom line better. And I think the humans should be treated the same. I think that there's a shift that's coming.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm sure there was some of this in COVID or in this industry during COVID, but COVID really exposed a lot of these issues outside of this industry. And I wasn't in this industry, so you can speak to that during that time. But it really exposed that, where companies had to slow down, talk to their people, figure out what was going on with their people. It also exposed a lot of poor leadership during COVID, right?
Sure did.
It absolutely did. People weren't just numbers anymore. You had to know that you needed to, not how people were doing, their family, every single aspect. Hey, we were dealing with a lot of uncertainties, and how do you lead people to achieve great things through uncertain times, right? And the reality is what was discovered through all of that is most leaders were ill-equipped to be able to handle that. And so you saw burnout, you saw all sorts of different issues. And so right now, where this industry is at, of that kind of rip out and repair type mentality, is that
it's untenable.
It's not going to work anymore, right? And maybe in some some areas it will, but it's not scalable. It's not going to grow. It's whatever the demand is, right? It's not going to scale. So
even as a business, it doesn't make good business sense anymore.
No.
Because what would happen if you had a person that worked for you for 3 years, and in the past you were moving at such a massive volume of velocity that you would just be like, goodbye, tag, you had it, now we'll bring in someone else. Because there used to be a line of people at the door that wanted to go there. Now I'm in the primary line of business we use to generate revenue as a human resource, and they come with not only their own name, they come with their own thought of a method of thought. They come with their own emotions, and they all think differently and act differently. So we learned fast that we had to invest hard in that. And I mean, there's a lot of ways for us to improve that because we are still growing, but we've always had that intent. We're just trying to figure out the best way to do that, right? And in doing that, you have to make those mistakes before you get better at investing into your people. I think that what we've learned is instead of replacing that person at year 3, we have a person on our team we have great people on our team, but we have someone on the management team that, look, mental health is a real thing, right? And the circumstances of what we do as professionals in this industry transcends into what we do at home and vice versa. And if we have, what were they calling it? Existential times or whatever the phrase was during COVID. They're like, this is incredible that we've never seen anything like this before. I'm like, well, this is kind of exactly what was necessary at the end of COVID. We started the 5th Industrial Revolution, and that revolution's designed to help us all have a healthier, harmonious relationship with everything, including the technology and machines in our life. It starts by using the machines and the technology to improve our lives instead of using them to divide us as a society or a community. But we found that mental health is a factor for everybody. Every company right now statistically has at least 20% of their workforce that is suffering from mental issues.
Minimum 20%.
At minimum. Yeah. And those people, if they're being removed from that company, they're being passed on to another company. Whereas if we slow down as an industry, and that's what I think the diversity and inclusion ideas were created from. I think ESG plays into this as well as a strategy. But if we slow down and we take someone, like we have a guy on our team that we pulled off of a lead role and put him into an incubator role within the business to help bring value to the business. He's crushing it for us. But we're simultaneously watching him go through his journey, and he's unpackaged things from childhood trauma that he's been carrying around for 30 years, right? So imagine carrying a 40-pound weight vest on, and you're going for a walk every day, and then one day you get to drop that. And what's that like walking without all that extra pressure and stress? How much more enjoyable is your life? And we're getting to watch the eyes of these people as they're getting healthier. But what happens when we don't rip out and replace? I may lose a few months, 2 or 3 months, but I'm going to lose 4 to 6 months in productivity by replacing somebody anyway. So in a couple months, I slow down to fix this person. Yeah, I'm rolling up my sleeves and investing time. There's no guarantees, but I believe that in doing that, the respect, the trust, and the loyalty that's gained in the long term gives me an annuity model based team member that will stay with us through the ups and downs and suffer those inconveniences with us as we continue to grow. As long as we invest into their long-term health and help them become better mothers or better fathers or better brothers or better sons or sisters and daughters and stuff.
Well, loyalty is a two-way street, right? Companies always, they want their employees to be loyal, but that's a two-way street. What are you doing to take care of that individual? And I've asked that to countless organizations, like, well, I think they're interviewing elsewhere. Like, okay, yeah, they have free will. They're allowed to do that. Why are they looking elsewhere, right?
Yeah, they're free agents. Yeah.
They're free agents. But, what are you doing to develop these people or invest in that just to know them, right? And like that self-reflection hurts. Be like, oh, yeah.
What do we have to fix?
What do we have to fix? And then so we come to terms with it. And it doesn't mean that you're going to keep 100% of your employees. You're not. That's not what I'm seeking. But it's just to...
You want a high retention rate, though. That's...
Of course.
And this year for our goals as a business, we define what success looks like in retention, employee retention and satisfaction were amongst the top things that we wanted. Because if we could take care of them, they'll take care of our clients, and that takes care of all the other problems, right? But I think that we're reaching a point in time where it pencils out better. If I lose less productivity, it's like I was telling someone, the analogy was like, if I'm driving from Austin, Texas to Dallas, Texas, and I get a flat tire, 30 minutes north of Austin, my options are to keep driving as fast as I can to get to that meeting so I'm not late, or I got to pull over and lose 20 minutes to change that tire, but I can make that time back up and still make it to my meeting on time. And there's too many companies or too many businesses or too many leaders that are like, just drive on it. It'll get us there. Yeah. We'll slow down or we'll do whatever, but they're not going to do anything to fix the problem yet until they get to the destination. Where I'm like, why don't we figure out a way to stop in the middle of the journey and fix that, and then watch how we could probably even get there faster in the long term.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that if you do that, it actually pencils out better, because I'm getting way more output and productivity from people when they come back to service and they are at as close as you get to 100%.
Right.
And I'm trying to figure out how we can use our platforms with your leadership to take this from a diverse base, right, where you could take some of the other strong female women in this industry that you've got to brush shoulders with already and create the chorus sings louder than the soloist, right? So as you use these platforms to go and amplify that message, we will still block and tackle and cheerlead for you. But there's a lot of things that I almost feel like we as dudes have to govern ourselves amongst the women in this industry. I'll give you an example. Do you know how many okay, I've hosted DCAC every year, right? I mean, since we started in 2015. And without a doubt, every year there's some dipshit that will come to this conference. They're normally the ones that are never sitting inside listening to the content. They're the ones sitting outside where the bar's open, and they're just networking and getting drunk because they just view it as a free trip paid for by their company to come to a cool town and meet a lot of cool people. But they're really not taking their career very serious. They're just having fun, right? And that's okay. There's just certain stages of maturity where you start taking this shit serious. But without a doubt, every year, there's always some sort of stupid alcohol-related incident because people are going to drink too much and they're going to say too much when they do it. Yeah. I'm not going to remove drinking from everybody because I do like putting some loudmouth soup in front of these people and listening to them actually share their ideas with unfiltered, context. But at the same time, what would happen if we were standing there and Jesse saw, some girl get harassed in any form or fashion and we did nothing about it? Like, that we would go do something about that. We're kicking people out of bars every year at DCAC. It's not a chronic problem. It's just we have a standard. And if you fall below that standard, there's zero pause in how we're going to react or rotate to that. But we do our best most of us will try to do our best as men to block and tackle and look out for those sisters that we have in this industry to make sure that they don't have to tolerate some asshole, right? There's plenty of ass rocket notes that I've had to send to people because the way they were treating, a female unit at one of these events. No problem doing that. As you guys create that platform, I'm telling you this, and we've had this conversation offline. I'm like, I'm scared to death sometimes around women in this industry. And I need your help, not to insulate me from them, but because I can say or do anything, or I could not say or not do anything. And as history just proved us, it does not matter if there's a diverse unit that wants to challenge me. It's not whether or not I have to prove that I'm innocent. I mean, it actually is. I'm guilty, right?
You're guilty until proven innocent. Yeah.
So there needs to be, I think, selfishly as a man, white male privilege here speaking, right? But
self-governance amongst us female units.
Yeah. Look.
And there should be. Men keep each other accountable on stuff. And absolutely, there's a lot of opportunities. And I will say, in this industry, and it's not just exclusive to this industry, but specifically in this industry, I've been shocked by some of the things that I've seen women with even influence. I'm like, whoa.
What way? Like, you shocked what happens to them or the way they act?
The way they act, right? Oh. Or what they talk about. I'm like, hey, we got to make sure, hey, it's not right for men to talk X, Y, and Z way. We better be conducting ourselves and, respectfully as well. And so I think when we strengthen the community, right? And we do start doing some self-governance, and we start, as it sounds like our male counterparts here, you guys have a threshold of what you'll stand or what you'll tolerate, what you won't tolerate as it relates to, your female counterparts. We should be doing the same.
I don't know if I see, or I tell you this not from the altitude or an airspeed I cruise at, but from the optics and how I view the industry. I'm not around dudes that are sitting around trying to find ways to limit the growth opportunities for women. And I'll tell you what.
No. I don't.
My best friends in this industry, almost all of them have daughters.
Yeah.
And we know that our daughters will one day either work directly in this industry or they'll be working in the ecosystem that is in orbit of this industry in some capacity, right? Because at some point, they will probably all have jobs that have never been created yet, but will be to serve the growth of this industry because this industry is the engine for every other industry.
Yeah.
But I've never been around a single dude of influence that has ever said anything other than how do we block and tackle and open up for more? And it's not that we have limitations to how we can inspire, but why would they trust us? We need to have, I think there's some incredible, powerful women in this industry. Like you were talking about Nancy at Compass. she's like almost a burning
Tammy,
bush
yeah.
in this, and Tammy too, right? But like, there's powerful women thought leaders in this industry, and they have the ability to influence a lot. How do we use the platforms we have to help them influence others to get into this space? Because it's got to be cool. It's got to be something where women feel like, hey, why would I go in that industry unless I have a fair shot? Why would I go in that industry if I don't feel like I'd be safe around all these dudes? Why would, how do we change that narrative, change the way that this industry is perceived by my daughter and all my friends' daughters who are like, you know what, dude, I can make a living there and I can make a difference.
Yeah.
How do we do that? Because it's not coming from my mouth.
No, it's not. I mean, you took a first step and you brought in someone outside the industry, myself, female, promise. And
So you're holding all the white women back? Is that what you're saying?
no, but I mean, it's taking that step, right? Like, don't wait for someone else to do it. Like, yes, there is risk in anyone that you hire. Doesn't matter if they were super successful at whatever organization. That is not.
There's no guarantee.
There's no guarantee whatsoever. So I think that there's a lot of great conversations that I'm seeing in the industry happen right now. Like, how do we do this? How do we combine efforts to make this happen?
Yeah.
So yeah, more podcasts, more events.
I think you're gonna have to host some of these podcasts. You're gonna have to get some of these ladies on the show, and you have to go through the mud and the blood and the beer. Like, what are the real things that we could be doing? Because I remember, this is no shit. I was talking to a lady. I'm like, hey, what if I did this and this and this? And I'm willing to do all these things. And she goes, hey, why don't you just mansplain to me all the other ideas you have? And I was like, damn, I don't want to help anybody now. Now, do you understand why I have trust issues sometimes? Because I'm like, man, it's a very, it doesn't have to be.
No.
But it is. Look, there's a philosophy on things that we were born and raised to talk about, right? Like when I was a kid, your parents like, be nice. Don't talk about, politics, and don't talk about religion, and don't talk about sex, the differences in sex.
Yeah.
And that really worked out really shitty for us as a community and as a society, because now we're not really, I don't think that American culture is really as divided as the media would like to generate revenue and producing and creating this thing, because an unhealthy and unstable whatever creates a need for them, right?
Sure.
I don't think it's as bad. I think there's a lot of people that are indifferent, that are like, you hear like Elon talked about on Twitter how there was like 12% of the people that were on Twitter represented 80-something% of the posts.
Oh yeah.
And
that's right.
and the reality is that's not a fair representation. So if you were like, look what all the things are on Twitter, well, that represents a very small group. And some of those people never had a platform or a voice in the past. And we probably don't need them to always have one in the future, right?
Right.
But I don't think it is as bad. And I think that we're dealing with a society that was raised to not talk about politics and to not talk about religion. And that's why it's so polarizing and divisive, is because people are like, if you don't agree with me, you're an idiot, or you're an asshole, or you're wrong. Instead of being like, hey man, we could agree to disagree, and it's okay, man. You have yours, your God, or I have mine, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be that crazy. I think that this topic is to a lot of the guys that I know. Like when I host DCAC and I'm like, hey man, we're going to do this, and there's going to be do you want to put a guy on the panel? You ask 10 guys to be on that panel. And
well, I remember last year, like you asked me to do this panel, and I was like, only if there's the male perspective on this. Like I want the male perspective. I want people to hear what you're saying, because it's uncomfortable, or what I've taken away is that it's uncomfortable for men to speak up and say, hey, like I want women in this industry, but I don't know how to engage, and here's why, right? And so I was like, when we were building that out, I was like, I want someone. You're absolutely right. Thank you to Luke, who was on that panel.
Yeah, he's awesome. Well, he's a monster of a man too,
yes.
So he's not intimidated. Yep.
No, but it had bounced around to, say, a lot of heavy hitters to be on there, and it's just like, for whatever reasons, whether it was schedules for the sake of this conversation, it was maybe they didn't want to talk about it, right?
It's a dangerous hot seat.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying is, I don't want anything. There shouldn't be this fear about the words that come out of our face, as long as we're using them with the intent to advance a problem, right? And I should be able to ask questions without being ridiculed for having already not known that. And I should be able to offer ideas and suggestions without being told that I was mansplaining, right? And I have learned that it doesn't matter what I say or don't do. If someone wants to accuse me of anything they want, doesn't matter how big of a piece of shit they are, I could still be suffering because of that, right? And I think some of that may be Goldilocksing is what I call it, where, it started off as too small and then we over-rotated and it's too crazy. And I think now the pendulum will shift back to just about right, but we have to figure out what that cadence looks like in the way that we engage with each other. Do you agree?
Yeah. And it's not exclusive to this industry either.
How's the dog?
Oh, he's good. He's happy. He's on my lap.
What's it? Okay. So you have a very specific name for this dog. What was the genesis behind that?
Fitzgerald.
Okay. So which one?
So when I adopted him from the shelter like 6.5 years ago, he had a different name, and I'm not going to say it because I'm going to offend someone, but I couldn't call a dog that. And so like the short name for that name was really close to like Fitz.
Oh.
And so I was like, he seems like a gentleman and very scholarly. So I called him Fitzgerald officially.
Yeah. Well, very cool. All right. So we were covering around the horn, and what we were talking about was the diversity that needs to take place in this industry, but it can't be forced and manufactured. No. I think if it's unorganic and unnatural or unauthentic, I think people get that, right? And I think that's where you have a lot of people that want to talk about things. Like there's a lot of guys that I will be around. It's not that they're around saying, I've never been around guys that are saying negative or disparaging things, but I have been around guys that are like, I'm definitely scared to death of the way that I would engage that, because females are a protected class, and they're so few and far between in this industry that we got to, one, be careful not to offend any of them because we don't want to lose any, and two, it doesn't take much these days for any of us to be accused of anything, for anything to be inappropriate.
Sure.
Right. And there should be some greater tripwires because, men in general, I'm a feminist too. Men are pieces of shit, right?
They're not.
I say that. Well, look, we are, but we aren't, right? But I mean, we are more likely to be unorthodox, rude, all those things. But at the same time, like, I don't think that people that even make those bad decisions are bad people. I just think that we don't understand, like, sometimes the right room, right audience, or right jokes, but we want an environment where we feel safe with everyone we work in. It's one of the 3 pillars of success in a business is you have to have people that are inspired, they have to feel safe, and they have to be fulfilled.
Right.
It's hard to feel safe sometimes around people of a different diversity class. It doesn't have to just be women. I mean, Thank God we have plenty of people of diversity at our company too. And there's they joke on us just as much as we joke on them about that, right? Yep. But we should have that healthy exchange.
Yep.
When you were in the military, was there racism that you saw a lot?
Racism? No. Right. And it's zero.
Zero. Right. No one gave a shit. We cared if you could save our life, if you would put it at risk. Right. That's the only thing that people cared about, right? So, like, in fact, what makes the military so great is the diversity that I think that it gets. It's getting
absolutely.
Well, it's getting rural, it's getting inner city, it's getting every minority class, every religious class. I mean, I was on a submarine. We had Muslims, we had people that were celebrating, you'd have Jewish guys and Muslim guys sitting down and eating right next to each other. No problem at all, because they shared the same mission under the same command. I think that there's a long way to go, but it's really not that far to go. It's just more long-term conversations.
It is. It all boils down to communication. There's not one silver bullet or one thing that we can do that's going to like bridge the gap completely, right? There's multiple different angles to tackle, but simply put, people from outside the industry, right? We want to attract more diverse candidates or people just in general to the industry. People are going to be what they can see, right? So if we're conducting ourselves in a way and we're talking about the industry in a certain way and we're talking about the opportunities and sidestep here. So when I did speak at Operation HIT, I did a little panel there as well. I think the gentleman was the CEO and had asked a question during the Q&A. He's like, well, how do I get more women onto my company, right? Or how do I get them to speak up or something along those lines? Oh, how do I get them into my company? And I was like, I'm going to generalize things and I'm going to make a lot of assumptions. But if I go to your company's website right now, I'm going to look at representation, right? And I can almost guarantee, because you're asking me that question, you probably don't have female representation at the leadership level, right? And so as a young woman, or even you could have a Hispanic male or whatever, people are going to say, hey, are there people like me at this organization? And if they're not, doesn't mean that they're not going to join your organization, but they're going to be like, well, maybe the path isn't quite as easy for me, right? So that's true.
Yeah, I
right?
didn't think about that.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So it does seem as though it's up to you guys to teach us how to open up those paths to be more welcoming. It's not that they're not there. It's just that, like I ordered some DoorDash the other day at the compound, and the DoorDash girl's texting me, and she doesn't want to come into the compound. She's like, well, is gate closed once I drive in? She's like, do you mind if I just leave it at the end of the driveway? Which, is a really far walk, right?
Yeah.
But I was like, hey, listen, I'm texting her back. I'm like, thank God you asked. Don't ever do anything that makes you feel unsafe.
Yeah.
I hope that you were raised right. Your parents told you to don't do anything that makes you uncomfortable or you don't feel safe. I wouldn't want my daughter to do that either. Leave it there and I'll come get it.
Yeah.
But the reality is the gate could be there, but people still may not want to come in. So creating opportunity is only part of the problem.
Yep.
And there's plenty of opportunity.
Well, back to the people be what they can see. That goes, the responsibility is on both sides of the aisle, but really heavily on the female side. If we want to bring more women into this industry, it's going to have to be us women, not just people who have influence, right? Of, acting a certain way, speaking a certain way, speaking about specific things, reaching out and pulling people in versus just saying, hey, the door's open, come on in. No, it's going to be our job to go in and welcome people through the door.
Interesting. Well, I do think that when you're ready to put together that little strike team of female, and we have plenty of powerful women in our company too, but I'm sure that we could easily recruit some from outside of it that would want to help with that platform. But I would love to see, I hope that you do something that's provocative or disruptive, that is not the same as everyone else, just trying to do more of it. Yep. But I hope that we do something that is going to make a difference finally. Because right now I feel like we just keep talking about it, but we're really just kicking a can down the road, right? Like I was really pleasantly surprised to see the demographics of our business, from how many percentage of our company is veterans to how many are minorities, how many are female. And it's a healthy balance.
It is.
But we never sought that. We weren't trying to check those boxes to make it look like it does. We were just trying to find the best people. And then it turns out that the best people turned out to be the demographics they are. There is value in shifting the optics, right? I feel like there are many of us, I say us, that are looking at the binoculars the wrong way, right? And we see the threats that the diverse people can introduce to us. Let's be honest. I could fire a woman. Almost any woman that I could fire could easily say, well, it's because of this and that's why. And that's something that I have to, regardless of the circumstances of whether there's any evidence of any kind, it'll still be something that I have to kind of go through the optics through, right? So
the reality is, though, is that actually happens to women too.
Does it?
Oh yeah, I've had someone who said that to me. Didn't happen, thankfully. Everything is on camera, but yeah, I've been accused of that because someone, yes, they got fired and they were hurt, and so they lashed out and they decided to say that, and so yeah, it left it up to me to defend myself, and it was maybe not as egregious as maybe some of the other things that gentlemen experience and whatnot, but it goes both ways. It really does.
I've learned that some of the most insecure people are some of the most hurt people. And what I've also learned is hurt people, they like to hurt people, right? So the weaker they are, almost the more dangerous they are.
Makes them feel powerful for sure.
I think if we could screen that a little bit better too, it would help. It would have certainly helped me a few times throughout the course of my role as a CEO, but I have to learn those painful lessons. There's a tax to these things. It's like the stupidity tax. Like, hey, you won't do that again because now you just learned. My thing is there are things that each of our groups can be doing better to do better. But I don't know what that is yet. So I'm only good at facilitating a platform to hopefully there's a greater exchange of ideas that take place with people that are a lot smarter than me, which probably isn't that hard to find.
Yeah.
And then you guys could codify a couple ideas that we could throw some wood behind the arrow with them with these platforms and see what works.
Yeah.
Right. So,
well, maybe I should ask the audience now of women who would want to be on this podcast. And we're talking about this right now. Sorry, you're off the podcast. But,
that's fine.
Where it's a group of us or it's, and just one other guest. So, yeah, reach out. Like,
this is your podcast too, right? Yeah. So you could do
this
anything
is
you want.
People's podcast.
100%. This is like, I'm not the only host of this thing.
No.
I'm one of the hosts. So are you now. But like, I hope that you weaponize this into taking that aperture and widening it for others to view into it and feel that it's a safe place with your own voice. I mean, that's why I wanted to really start with this construct that says you're someone that entered this industry with zero experience and found that you were able to contribute value. You're someone that entered this industry without experience. It's a female that's in a very heavily male saturated industry, and you are still able to feel safe and bring value. Yeah. And not just value, but you could drive change, right? And whether that's a measurement of value or not, but being a change agent or a disruptive change agent.
Positive change, yep.
Right. So I'm hoping that others from a macro level feel like they could at least reach out to you and find breadcrumbs on how to get one step closer to this industry. Because we are in the industry of, it just so happens to anybody that's listening, we don't only hire for our own growth.
Right.
We are a recruiting arm and will hire and place candidates with other companies that are our clients, right? In operations or construction. And not just that now, any role that can be converted into full staff augmentation, safety, scheduling, it doesn't matter. We do all of that, right? Yep. And you will help them. So they should find you and you should create an easier beacon for them to discover you. Maybe that's the next step that we have, because the whole element, like iMasons did a great job. And then they had a break off of that with like the iMasons women's groups, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that part is going to be the part that allows them to create a stronger orbit around it as well. We need that, especially with the small numbers that we have. But I feel like this platform should be used to target outside of the industry more from that female side, not just within it by closing the ranks amongst the women and making them stronger. But we should be doing things more actively involved with other outside industry female-led initiatives that we could. Why wouldn't we go recruit at why wouldn't we set up and be a sponsor at some, marathon that's really dedicated just to women? And then we have something at the carnival, which is we're handing out t-shirts and stuff, and we're meeting all these really powerful. I've learned that a lot of the strongest mentally the strongest women I've met have been very, they love themselves enough to take care of themselves, mm-hmm. to condition, like you can tell by how much someone loves themselves by the way that they present themselves.
Sure.
If they have confidence and believe in themselves, then they're going to, and they love themselves, then they're going to take care of themselves more. And if they don't have as much confidence in themselves, or maybe don't believe in themselves as much, then they may be more enlightened to just let their shit go a little bit. Why bother? But I've learned that when you go to a marathon, it doesn't matter. I've seen 350-pound women cross the finish line at marathons before. Those women have the right mindset to be contributors to this industry. We just need to go find those outlier places where we could draw in people that they have a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah.
They're driven from the inside out. They don't give a shit. They're not going to not only let me stop them, that they don't need me to help them. I can't get in their way if I wanted to.
Right.
We need more of that, don't you think?
Yeah. 1000%.
So shifting back from the macro to the micro, from us and our perspective, like I asked you, like what were the things that you've learned coming into this industry from the outside looking in that you didn't anticipate discovering? We covered that. What were the things coming into this team as a woman? I mean, you're former military, so you were accepted just like all the rest of us, but were there any differences in the way that we expect certain things when we go to new places, but it's almost never exactly what we thought it would be, right?
Sure. What
were some of the things that, good, the bad, and the ugly, I guess? I don't care. I have nothing to hide.
I will say I didn't really tie myself to any, like, what would I expect? I was more focused on, hey, when you go into something new, like you want to make sure that like you are providing value and whatnot. But what I learned in I've worked in big corporate organizations before where it's very cookie cutter and you get to like you understand your space. And as you know, I've never exactly been one to be afraid of authority, and no one's really ever like scared me. I also respect people's whatever, but I didn't, uh, I thought, okay. I thought you guys were on like a far different spectrum in terms of disruptive, right? I was like, oh, I'll bring these guys back to this way or to this center. And I'm like, you guys were already there. That's not what was needed. And I think there was more buy-in from the team, which I didn't need. I needed to prove myself to the team, but I thought that time was going to take a lot longer than it actually did.
You had there were some challenges in the beginning. I'm sure there's a couple of guys on the team. They're like, tell me what am I going to gain from this? I know that.
Yeah, I will there were a couple guys who treated me like I was an assistant, and I was like,
to prove. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, hey, I can help you, sure, but here's where I can really help you, right? And going in with it without being like, well, do you know who I am or what I can do? Like, I just removed that from myself. We all have egos, men and women, right? Sure. But tried to remove that and listen and observe. And I don't think I've met a more caring team. I mean, I knew I like the people here, right? I jibed with you guys. I'm like, oh, I actually want to hang out with people. I tend to be an introvert, right? And so recharge by being by myself. But I'm like, I actually enjoy being around these people. And I was hoping that wouldn't change, right? The dynamic of like, okay, now it's official. And that didn't change. And also like we have some really freaking talented people on our team. Like all the way up and down the chain of command. We have some really talented people
that care about each other,
about our purpose, about what they're doing for and with our clients, right? I'm like, that's inspirational right there. It's not just, oh, it's a 9 to 5, check in, check out. Like they genuinely care and they're asking really tough questions. And I love being on the whatever in the spotlight for it. And like, I don't have all the answers to their questions, but bringing them, they want to be part of the solution, right? And so, hey, yeah, I don't have all the answers, but would you work on this with me? And people are willing to do that. They're not just passing it off and saying, this is a problem, you deal with it. They want to be part of the solution.
There's a lot of times they'll come to me and I'll be like, what did Karli say? Right? Because I want them to bounce those things off you first. I want them to I already know what I think. I already know what I would say. I want to know what you would say. And I want them to get both barrels. It's like the yin and yang. That's the balance from our leadership side now is they get to understand what you would say and understand what I would say. And then they get to kind of figure out what's right in the middle for them. Right. Yeah. And it's typically something in between. Do you agree?
Absolutely. And like I said, that appetite hasn't gone away. And I think what not just the leaders, but the people in the organization have come to realize is that the more someone is willing, is there asking questions and wanting the organization to invest or me to invest in them in time or whatever, they're getting my time, right? And maybe it's not squeaky wheel gets the oil, but hey, they're raising their hand like, hey, I want you in here. I want you in here. And so it's great to be wanted.
Well, I think that it wasn't just wanted, but it was needed, right? Yeah. You came in and you're like, my objective is to stabilize what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to standardize on everything that you guys are doing. And then when we're done, then we could focus on optimizing what we're doing. Yeah. And we didn't think like that. We were just like, we could go faster. We could go bigger, and we were sabotaging ourselves along the way. And it's been the most incredible yet humbling experience of my life, being in this. And it doesn't matter how many mentors I've had and all the advice I get from other CEOs are like, let me tell you, and I'm like, not us, not here. We have this entirely different group of dynamics. Yeah. And I've learned that a lot of these things are inevitable. Even some of the stupid things that have happened to us where I'm like, if it wasn't them, it would have been someone else. It was unavoidable and we would have had to still make that mistake and check that box.
Yeah.
So, why don't we start like kind of bringing this home? I don't want to control the narrative, and I want you to have the opportunity to explain to maybe anybody that's listening, what advice would you have if they wanted to enter this industry and they were men? Doesn't matter if they're just women, but anybody trying to get in this industry. What's the advice for people that you'd have? And then again, maybe do bring it down from a female perspective, because yeah, there's a lot of dudes in the space, but there's a lot of good dudes in the space too that would be the first one there if you needed something, right? So it's a safe environment. I feel it's safe. I feel it's safe, but what do I know? I'm not at risk like you are, right? So I'm not saying you're at risk either, but people have no idea. Like you're this, this is the Little House on the Prairie version of you that they're getting, that almost Amish version. So they're getting that version. They don't realize the assassin version. They just see there's the missionary and the mercenary.
Yeah.
They're getting the missionary today, right?
Yes, very much so.
But the reality is, when to use that balance better than anybody else I've seen. And you're teaching the ladies on our team on when to use that, right? And when to turn it on. And I think that's that's the IP that you have. What's the advice you have for people? Like, what would you tell people if you're on a stage right now and they're like, I'm thinking about getting in? Doesn't matter what they are. What would you say to them?
I'd tell them to reach out. Like, reach out. You can reach out to me, Karli at weareoverwatch.com. Reach out to me via email. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Reach out to someone in the industry, right?
Sure.
And start asking questions. And if they can't ask them, point them in the right direction. There's a number of different conferences out there for people to get plugged in. There's a number of different events. I think a lot of this falls on our shoulders to really open up those doors and
Who's ours?
As an industry, right?
Okay.
Industry leaders,
Sure.
whether male, female, right? Anyone, and start educating or just talking about it, right? Getting people excited, right? Hey, you were a PM in this world. Well, you can't be a PM in this world because of construction. Well, maybe you can, right? What does that look like? Let's start having those conversations. So it's on both sides.
Awesome. What do you tell people you do for a living?
Full-time psychologist, part-time firefighter.
That's probably well said, actually, and it would encapsulate stuff. When you try to explain to people, though, what industry you're in, what do you tell them?
Right now, I just say the data center industry. I'm still figuring that out, like
Sure.
how to condense that down. I use the little facts and stuff that I've, like I have the Barney version, and no offense to Barney, but I have the Barney version. I need the 5-year-old version of things right now.
Sure.
So whenever you super smart people start explaining things, I think I've said this to you. I'm like, how would you explain that to a 5-year-old? No, and so that's for my benefit, right?
Maybe
Well,
that's what's necessary.
yeah, how do we talk to the masses, right?
Yeah.
So one day I'll be able to speak at 50% of your smartness there.
It'll take that long.
But
this is not that hard of an industry to understand if you just want to understand.
Yeah.
Right. And what I have learned is that everybody in this industry wants to help. Like if you ask someone, they'll tell you. Like ask them what this and that, and they're gonna. A lot of people take pride in their ability to be able to introduce this stuff. I think a lot of people, I could tell you on a personal level, outside of those that I've wrestled with and outside of those that I served with, all of my greatest relationships have come from within this industry. I have a tremendous amount of respect for those that I've worked with and grown up in this industry with. And I think that I would still be friends with them even if we were never working together, because I've learned that there's a lot of this industry draws in a really unique skill set of talent.
Sure.
And it's typically some outliers of some kind. They're people that didn't want to go into a homogenous industry because everyone else is doing that. In fact, I think that may be a reason why there's a lot of military in this industry. You think about it from this perspective. When you go join the military, you joined the Air Force.
Right.
What made you think that's what, was that the only office that was open that day?
No.
For the recruiting office?
You want me to tell this story?
No, but you could have picked any different industry. I mean, you could, look at every branch of service like a different vertical of industry.
Yeah.
And you could have picked any industry or any branch of service, and you chose the weakest one.
The smartest one.
Right. And you went into that one, and And when you did it, you just wanted to make a difference, right? You didn't go in the military to make money. Did you join the military to make money?
No, definitely not.
Okay. But we are more prone to taking risk and signing to take oaths that could cost up to and including our lives to go do something for other people we don't know, but they're strangers and they took the same oath, so they're in the club. Less than 1/2% of the U.S. population is served in the military, and that is, in my opinion, the biggest fraternity outside of, colleges, and you picked a vertical, took a risk, went into it, loved what you did, came out, and it, that was the foundation for your career. But when you came out, I think a lot of the veterans that are coming out, they for the same reasons they went in the military, they want to do something that was significant. They didn't join to make money. They joined to make a difference. I think when they get out of the military, it's for the same reason. They want to be significant again. They want to go do something, and they want to get paid proportionate to their value. Maybe that's the difference between the military is you were definitely underpaid, but that's not why you're there.
It's definitely a shift in mindset when you get out, right? Of like, you knew what your purpose and your mission was, and it's redefining that, right? And, the reality is a lot of the things that we do post-military aren't going to be as sexy, right? Or adrenaline. Well, I don't know. Maybe in this industry it's totally different, but they're not that. So it's like, hey, you know what? What did I really enjoy about being in the military? I enjoy the people that I was with and what I was doing when I was serving. So you have to, it's a mindset shift of being like, okay, what's my new purpose? Oh, my new purpose is building teams, right? I enjoy building high-performing teams, right? And so that's where I get my, gratification of what I do, my purpose and what I'm here on earth for. Just as an example.
Sure. Well, what else do you want people to know about you? Because I skipped over the introduction of your background, which I normally spend the first hour in people's backgrounds, but you've done this podcast before and other people could go back and reference that one. But what else do you want people to know about you? And is there anything regarding your own personal philosophy on diversity and inclusion that we haven't covered? Because I wanted this conversation to be a reflection of what true diversity and inclusion looks like.
Sure.
We could work together. We could have a healthy relationship. We could have healthy friction.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, look, I have to imagine I frustrate you a lot more than you frustrate me, right? Just based on my methods probably. But there are definitely times where I am frustrated with the ways that I have to adapt to what I'm doing, but it doesn't mean what you're asking me or coaching us to do is wrong. It just makes me uncomfortable. So my first reaction is like, this sucks. But then I realize this is the right thing to do, right? But what would be anything else that you want people to know about you or your philosophy on what we're trying to accomplish with true diversity and inclusion?
What do I want them to know? I would just say that, about me specifically, like, I'm not special, right? Like, people are like, oh, you're this and that. And like, I grew up poor, right? I grew up poor, grew up on a farm, didn't know we were poor, right? And I understand I have like some privileges and stuff, as society calls them these days, which I like them to be the standard for our society, right? But to get people comfortable with, in a healthy way, challenging the status quo, right? And asking uncomfortable questions. And from a leader's perspective, like, hey, whatever frustrations you're having with your people, they're probably having the same ones with you as well. And so, 9 out of 10 problems are a communication problem, right? And so, and that goes to our grander conversation of like, we just need to start talking about things and like, let's lay it out on the table, right? And figure out, okay, I didn't realize you were thinking.
I don't want to get burned for talking about things or broaching subjects that I don't understand.
Yeah. It's like one of the things we were talking about earlier, and I know we're closing this out, is talking about like, having a male leader, not knowing how to engage with a female employee. Well, straight up just asking questions. How do you want me to engage with you? What are you comfortable with, right? What are you not comfortable with,
yeah,
right?
That's a good idea. I should have probably done that with you, huh?
So I
didn't care.
I am, I'm different in the sense of like, I get it. I was in the military. I didn't grow up with like the construct of gender in the sense of like, oh, well, I'm a woman and I can only do this, or or I'm going to be the first female to do that, or it's cool that I'm a woman and I'm able to do that. Like, it just wasn't like that. You just did it, right? And I grew up on a farm. oldest daughter. Like,
People don't realize that I've called you before on a 5:30 on a Thursday or a Wednesday night. You're like, hey, I'm field dressing 2 hogs right now. Is this important? How many times I try to reach out to you? You're like, sorry, I was out on the farm with my tractor backhoeing things. Or I was out churning my own butter or whatever, right? Like, people realize that you're a homesteading frontier lady, right?
Yeah.
Very self-reliant, very self-dependent.
Looks can be, people definitely make their assumptions about me based on what I look like or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that's on them. It's also on me for them to get to know me. And as you know, I'm a slow drip, but I would just say, hey, like, as humans, right, let's start opening up lines of communication to each other and start asking questions and being genuinely interested in other people, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Any advice for anybody else that's looking to get into this industry?
I think there's a call to action from our industry right now, where we need to open those lines of communication and combine efforts in what we're doing to again, not only open those doors, but go to the doors and start welcoming people in and informing, not just educating, but informing. Like, we have to sell this, right? Like, this isn't like, oh, we're great, you should come work for us. Like, we actually have to be like, this is why you should come and be in this industry, and this is what we can do for you in this industry. So I guess the call to action here is like, hey, who wants to be on this podcast and who wants to talk about it? Who has ideas? And let's start talking about them, and not just talking about them. Let's start doing something about it.
Yeah. I hope that what we can do is, my hope from this podcast was that there would be some other people, men or women, that are listening that have something to contribute to this conversation, and they're not scared to have the conversation.
Yeah.
And we can use this podcast as the genesis for them to find you. And you've had a huge impact on this business. We would not be where we're at today without you. And not because you've only been with us for 90 days, but you've been really helping from behind the scenes with me, as I was the first thing that you had to try to stabilize, probably, right?
It starts from the top.
Yep. And I was a shit show, right? I mean,
Your words.
Right. Well, I think that you said them once too, probably. I was going through explosive change in my life, and I've always felt very comfortable with that ride because I just had confidence in my coping skills in life. But it was nicer to hold on or to discover someone that I couldn't maybe have some of those conversations with the other dudes in the industry or in my company, because I needed to talk to people outside of my company sometimes. But it was the first time that I was able to find a strong female leader who addressed the real challenges that I was facing from a leadership perspective, and not from a female one, but from a leadership perspective that had a strong female overtone. And it was the first time that I really saw the strength of what a strong female leader can do to a team. Because on a submarine, at the time that I was in, there were no women on submarines. So my whole career has been around dudes, right? And
you're still coping and still going through. I'm kidding.
Well, I didn't have a lot of diversity growing up in my career in this industry. There wasn't a lot of female UPS service engineers and project, there just wasn't a lot of, there wasn't a lot of it, right? And now I see it, and now I have a healthy relationship with so many more of these people. All I've learned is that the best way to have a relationship with them is to try to earn their trust, and the best way to do that is to try to help them, right? Yeah. And you getting here not only helped this business, but is going to allow us to have a healthier impact on the community that we operate within, which is just the data center industry. It's not that big of a community. But I do think that before we have explosive growth, and the explosive growth is coming, right? The data center gold rush of 2024 has begun. The explosive growth to support AI is inbound. And for the next 3 years, we're going to be moving at a pace that we've never seen before. And we're going to now more than ever need more diversity in the way that we think as leaders. If not, then we can continue to harm ourselves and in the process harm the industry, or hold the industry up from growing and reaching the level that it can to support the growth demand by us, the consumer. Do you agree?
I totally agree.
So I'm hoping that, for people that are listening, you should at least give your email address one more time so they could slow down and write it down this time. And then make sure that they find you on LinkedIn. And then I hope that before now in DCAC 2024 in Austin, you've taken something from this and hopefully have collected, even if it's one or two other powerful women in this industry that decide to take it upon themselves to reach out. And then you tell them that you have this amazing platform, which is either the podcast or the conference itself, that you get to use with their help to create an orbit around it to get more of our attention so that we can help too. Believe it or not, we want to help. We just don't know what to do. And I definitely don't need to get shot in the face because I mansplained to the wrong woman on the wrong day what I thought would help them. And that just crushed, I don't need that shit. No one wants that. Who talks to, every time that someone says something like that to me, that's probably the last time I feel comfortable talking to them.
Yeah.
Right. So there's things that probably need to be changed on the other side as well, to where like, not everybody sucks. Not everybody really wants to. Some people just want to help.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So what else before we sign off? Anything else you want to add?
No, but I'll give my email address and we can probably put it in the notes of the episode. It's Karli, Karli, at weareoverwatch.com.
Yeah. We have to get another one like Little House on the Prairie at We Are Overwatch. Something universal. It'll be like a distro.
Yeah, distro.
Well, very cool. Well, listen, thanks for staying around, staying in town long enough to do this podcast. I appreciate it. I know you got a lot going on. So thanks for all the help and support you've given this team and for the changes that you've been able to make to this team, being a strong female leader. And I hope that transcends out of this team and into this industry more, because we as a business are designed to make a greater impact on this industry. So thank you for everything you've done. And I have safe travels back home.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
You got it. Thanks.